Anime sucks at romance. There, I said it. Let me explain. It's not like I think romance plots in anime are bad, I just find them often difficult to connect with. Most romance anime, particularly rom-coms, are not trying to actually tell a good romance plot, but instead are trying to directly appeal to the audience. In other words, they're pandering. Now, I want to be clear that there's not always a direct trade-off between the quality of an anime and the amount of pandering it contains. I mean, just look at the Monogatari series. While personally I'm not a gigantic Monogatari fan, I know for a fact that it is an animated achievement. Maybe I don't buy into the peak fiction meme, but there are few anime that even come close to the amount of effort that Shaft has put into this series. Additionally, despite essentially being a harem anime, let's be real here, the avant-garde and surreal approach to each of its arcs, which are defined by the girl they focus on, truly make Monogatari a work of art. Yes, it's pandering to the same harem fantasies as High School DxD, but that doesn't mean it's just a harem. It doesn't have to be. We'll see that pandering is merely a tool in the toolbox, but why is this relevant? Explaining it will give proper context for why Science Fell in Love, So I Tried to Prove It, also known as Rikekoi, is my favorite rom-com. The concept of Rikekoi is quite simple. Imuru and Yokomura are both graduate students working at a computer science lab at Saitama University. No, not that one. As an interesting aside, Saitama University is actually a real institution, and production studio Zero G actually worked directly with them to fact-check the various scientific concepts that appear in the anime. What scientific concepts? Well, one day Himuru claims to Yokomura that she's in love with him. So they start dating and sharing their bond over science, right? I mean, that's how it's supposed to work. Fuck no! They challenge each other to scientifically prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they truly love each other. You know, like normal people. From measuring heartbeats during close interaction to coming up with optimal solutions to the traveling salesman problem through heuristic. Okay. You may have recognized something by now. I geek out over this stuff. I not only study computer science, but I'm actually a published researcher. All of the science utilized in this anime are accurate and correct, and even goes into advanced concepts. Wait a minute. I'm being pandered to. So what exactly is pandering? At the end of the day, anime is entertainment. Oftentimes, when we get fascinated with a medium, we can find ourselves attributing more artistic intention regardless of the artistic merit of a work. The primary drive of animation studios is to maximize the sales of their product. Pandering can therefore become a dirty word, but targeting your audience is a fundamental skill of any commercial art. Let's take the shonen genre as a very simple example. Appealing directly to the audience is so fundamental to this genre that it's in its namesake, shonen, literally meaning boy. Explaining the foundations of shonen anime and manga would be an entirely different video in of itself. But most everyone understands that shonen series are trying to appeal directly to the fantasies of young boys. The power to overcome the trials of adolescence, as well as the ability to grow and overcome bigger and bigger challenges. Again, this isn't a criticism of the shonen genre. I love shonen anime. After all, I'm a young male who's been watching them for nearly 15 years now. However, as someone who has watched these series for so many years, I can recognize that they are designed from the ground up to appeal directly to my demographics and sensibilities. When it comes to romance anime, things can get a little trickier. But let me ask you this. How many times during your schooling did you experience two or more women fighting over the heart of a lonely, unpersonable, boring guy? Probably not often, right? But when you look at the many romance subplots within anime, this is often the premise. And yes, I know not all anime utilize this. Typically, anime that aren't meant to be classified as romance or rom-coms often have a single love interest. However, anime in this category don't really spend much time actually advancing the romance plot, as it's mostly secondary to what else is going on. This isn't a criticism unique to anime. Romance and rom-coms in Western media are usually relegated to movies rather than long-running series, typically because there is only so much content you can actually milk out of two people who won't just fucking go out already. The truth is that these characters are often meant to be a self-insert for the viewer so they can experience one of the fantasies of high school boys: multiple women paying attention to them. Now, I don't think that multiple women in a romance subplot is necessarily bad, just for me it often feels disingenuous. But again, that's just my personal taste. And that's okay! I want to be clear that I am not saying that you are a lesser anime fan just because the harem motif appeals to you. I mean, let's just take my favorite anime, Evangelion. One of the biggest and most fair criticisms is that the Judeo-Christian imagery is simply shoved in to make the viewer feel smarter than they are. At the end of the day, not every anime can appeal to every individual. In the case of Rikekoi, the pandering is so hyper-specific that only a graduate student in computer science could possibly appreciate all the humor. So that's it, mystery solved, right? Okay, that's a bit of a cop-out. It would be super easy for me to just say, oh, I understand the jokes of Rikekoi, and say that's why I think it's good and move on, but honestly, that wouldn't be very satisfying. Of course, I like the anime for more than that, so let's examine the reasons why people didn't like Rikekoi so I can explain why I did. Now, here's where I admit the title was a little bit clickbait. Because truth be told, the reviews of Rikekoi range from terrible to fantastic. The average rating is a 7.37, which is actually considered average for the site. That being said, it's about a standard deviation lower than most of the rom-coms that are generally considered the best. And from the people I talked to both online and personally, the general sentiment of the series is mediocre. That being said, the reviews on My Anime List and other sites for Rikekoi show the same general trends and complaints over and over. I think in order for me to justify calling Rikekoi my favorite romantic comedy, I need to address these specific complaints rather than simply reiterate the strengths. So when doing the research for this video, I examined the many negative complaints for the anime. However, most complaints came back to the fact that science as a plot device became overused and at some points even cringeworthy. Yeah, every episode is based around using a scientific concept to prove or disprove the love that Himura and Yokomura share for each other, but I just don't agree with this. Sure, I may be biased for the reason I've already noted, but the use of the various science gags are not merely used to elicit a cheap laugh. And frankly, I find these criticisms unfair, because in typical rom-coms, how is multiple women fighting over one MC not considered a gimmick? After all the characters are lab assistants who have their own various reasons for researching what they do. And that leads me into what I think is the best part of this short anime. One of the most central characters in comedy is the straight man. The character meant to maintain composure while every other character acts erratically. So naturally, the absolutely and possibly even clinically insane Himura and Yokomura would obviously need to have one. In Rikekoi, this comes in the form of Kanade, a young undergrad who joins the lab in order to fulfill a graduation requirement. Kanade is in no way a super original or unique character. Despite these flaws, I think Kanade just so happens to be the best character in this anime. Let me explain. Throughout the series, Kanade is forced to take some of the crazy schemes of Himura and Yokomura and turn them into something more viable. For example, when they plan their first date to an amusement park around a very basic concept in computer science. However, as a result of spending so much time around these characters who are absolutely insane, Kanade begins to form an inferiority complex, wondering how she could possibly compare. As the anime reaches its final third, our characters go on a trip to Okinawa for a research conference, a place where all of the undergrads are supposed to present what they've been researching. During these presentations, there's one member of the audience who spends his entire time beating down every single participant with his questions. To solve this, Yokomura hugs her, reassures her that her hard work's gonna pay off, and that her natural talent will shine through. She closes her eyes, she breathes.
よし、負けるな私。埼玉大学池田研究室。
And then she kills it. Her presentation turns out to be a novel version of the traveling salesman problem, inspired by the first date that she helped plan. All of this insanity, all of this craziness, it all helped inspire her for her research. She's able to demolish the questioner, earning herself praise throughout the entire conference. The scene is so inspiring because it's a reminder that Himura and Yokomura are not totally insane, just bent on satiating their own egos and neurosis. They are two leaders who are looking not only to advance their own research, but lift up the people who look up to them. They aren't just cheap jokes, but a reminder that whatever hobby and interests you may have, there is value in pursuing them with everything you have. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find someone out there that shares them too. This is why Science Fell in Love, So I Tried to Prove It is my favorite rom-com. While the focus of the story is of course on Himura and Yokomura, it uses their zaniness as a springboard to be something so much more inspiring. I feel as if many of the negative reviews for this series were viewing the supporting cast almost within the lens of a typical anime rom-com, where everyone else exists mostly as an accessory to the main characters. Once you realize that everyone in this anime has a story to tell, with our main duo as merely the driving force, you can realize that it's something so much more. Thank you so much for joining me on my first YouTube video. This was absolutely crazy. It took me a while to decide that I wanted to do one of these. After some gentle nudging from fans and friends, I decided to take the dive. If there's anything you want me to cover, please leave a comment or follow, and I'll definitely make sure to read them all. If you want to hear me talk more about anime, JRPGs, cosplay, etc., please consider following me on Twitch and Instagram, which I have linked below. Peace.